Today we're going to be doing the reverse of what we learned during our last class. So what we learned last class is to look at an inequality, and we graphed the y-intercept, and then we moved the slope, rise over run. We then decided whether or not we were going to make a dashed line or a solid line. If our inequality was a less than or a greater than, we made a dashed line. If it was a less than equal to or greater than equal to, we made a solid line. We then looked to see which side of our coordinate grid we would graph. If it was greater than, we graphed above the line. If it was less than, we graphed below the line. Today we're going to be doing the reverse of that. We're going to go ahead and take a look at a graph, and we're going to write that inequality from looking at that graph. Once again, this is kind of a throwback to our linear equations chapter. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So we are going to learn how to, from inequality graph, to an equation. From inequality graph to an equation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw our graph that we're going to be looking at. So go ahead, and if you don't have a little piece of paper from class, you're just going to do a very quick coordinate grid. So I'm going to have you sketch a couple points, and then we will then, after we create our graph, then we'll go ahead and find that equation. So I'd like for you guys to go ahead and put a point on the y-axis at 6. And then go ahead and put a point on the x-axis at -3. Okay. So we're going to draw our line with those 2 points. And it's going to be a dashed line. So we're going to go ahead and line that up. Once again, if you don't have a ruler, there's lots of things you can use around the house. Instead, you can use a library card or a credit card. You can use like the edge of a pencil. You can take a piece of paper and fold it crisply a couple times, or of course, if you have a ruler, that's our best option. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a dashed line that goes through those 2 points. Once again, we have a y-intercept of 6 and an x-intercept of -3. Okay, we're going to go ahead and draw an arrow on both ends. And then we're going to very neatly and nicely shade the area that is below. So we're going to shade underneath. And remember, we want to practice shading really nicely. We don't want to scribble, because if we scribble, it's going to make our next section that we're going to be working on next week a little bit more difficult, because we're going to be doing systems of inequality. So we're going to graph 2 lines on the same coordinate grid. And then we're going to go ahead and find the solution, which is where the shadings overlap. So if we scribble, that makes it more difficult to find. So make sure you're taking your time and making work that you can be proud of. So we're taking our time to shade in that right area. Okay. And once again, if you don't have a colored pencil, you can just use a standard pencil. Like I said, we're going to be doing double-lapped overlap shading. So markers really don't work for this chapter. Okay, so there we have our graph that we're going to now analyze. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and we're going to look at the steps. And just like the other way, there's 6 steps. So here we go. So the first step is pick 2 good points. And remember, 2 good points means where they hit the crossroads of your coordinate grid. And find the slope. And remember, our slope is our m for our equation, and it's rise over run. Now, because I already have 2 points on here, my intercepts, I'm going to go ahead and use those points. So I'm going to travel from one point to the other, and I'm going to rise and run. So to get from one point to the other, I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have a rise of 6 over my run of 1, 2, 3. And these can be any 2 good points. Like I said, if you get the 2 points that are next to each other, you won't have to reduce. So I go ahead and take a look. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So I know my slope is going to be 2 for this problem. Our second step is we're going to go ahead and we're going to find the y-intercept. And our y-intercept, of course, is our b from our equation. So, of course, our y-intercept is very simply where the line intersects our y-axis. So it's going to be this point right here, which we know is 6. So that is just a visual. So our b is going to be positive 6 in this case. Okay, now our third step is we're going to start putting it into the equation or inequality of our line. So we have y, and then we're going to put our inequality here, mx plus b. Okay. So we're going to fill out what we know so far for this graph. So we have our y. We're going to leave our inequality blank for right now. We know our m is 2. We put our x there, plus 6. Okay, so now we're going to work on finding what that inequality will be. Step number 4. Pick your inequality. So if we have shaded above our line, then it's going to be a greater than. If we have shaded below, it's going to be less than. So we take a look and we know we've shaded below the line, so our inequality is going to be a less than. Okay, step number 5. If your line is solid, add an equal to underneath your inequality. So as you can see, we have a dashed line, so we're going to leave it as is. Our last step, number 6, is to check your answer, making sure that the correct side is shaded. This is just what we did on our other direction as well. So I always like to check with the point 0, 0, or if 0, 0 is on the line itself, 1, 1. So we're going to go ahead and double check that in here. So I'm going to plug in 0, 0. As you can see, because 0, 0 is shaded, it should make this statement true. So let's go ahead and take a look. 0 is less than 2 times 0 plus 6. 0 is less than 0 plus 6. 0 is less than 6. Yes, that is correct. So we know that we put the correct inequality in. If I got that incorrect, I would go ahead and have to switch this. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you're looking at your graph, you are going to see your y-intercept. You're going to pick 2 good points to figure out the slope, rise over run. You're then going to look at whether it is shaded above or below that picture inequality, and you're going to finish up by, if it is a solid line, adding that equal to underneath. Let's go ahead and get some practice on Desmos.